In 1859 by Reverend Jacob Shaw McComb Sr. He and his wife Emily moved out here, and shortly after they moved here, she gave birth to their fourth child, John G. Unfortunately, he passed away at 5 weeks. That's the first recorded death on the property. Emily had 10 children, and less than a year after that, she passed away at age 40, so that's the second recorded death. McComb sounded a little shady and that he remarried 3 months later. But that was normal back then. You're talking the 1800s, you've got a man with 10 kids. That was normal. And we've got a lot of history on him. He seems like he was a wonderful person. He lived on up into his 90s and was active in church and ministry throughout. So that is a true grave bell there. There was a window of time where we weren't good at telling you were dead or not. And some people got buried alive. So they would have a little sleeve attached to the bell going down into the coffin, with ropes tied to fingers, toes, and head. So if there was any movement, it would ring the bell. That's where Saved by the Bell came from, Dead Ringer, and the graveyard shift refers to the gentleman that would walk the graveyard at night listening for the bell. It's pretty heavy. It shouldn't ring on its own. If anybody wants to ring it, it's fine. I've got the wasp out of there. They build their nest periodically, but we've tried to de-wasp everything. This house, we think, was built in 1885 by Clark Martin. The Martin Hotel is still standing. It's about 500 yards that way. It's a residence, but he ran that. And we think it was Clark because this property was reduced to this 2.2 acres in 1885 when he bought it. And we found hardware on some of the doors that also was made in 1885. So everything best points to Clark. We'll walk this way. We're not sure when this apartment was added on. We put the hardy board on as soon as we got out here because we had a bad disrepair. If something does happen, we just pretend it isn't. That's our safe place. So you can see this outline. This is where we think the old homestead was. We had ground penetrating radar done here twice, and both groups got the same finding. They identified the footprint of this, and the fireplace was at the end of it, and it fit just perfect with what the log cabins of that day looked like. We found metal detecting out here. We found padlocks, latches, all the things you'd expect to find where a home had been. We found some Indian head pennies here. So we think that Reverend McComb and his family lived here. When he moved, he sold it to his cousin, Dr. John Connor. That's the first doctor to live on the property. He also was the county coroner, so he would have seen patients here and possibly prepared bodies or done autopsies here. He had an apothecary shop, so he carried the medicines here as well. And then when he moved on, we think that's when Clark bought it and built the house over there. So another thing about this area I sometimes forget is that when we've measured the entire outside with one of the millimeters to measure the milligauss to check the electromagnetic frequencies out here. And it's thought that if it's 2 milligauss or less, it's probably the land. If it's 8 or above, it's probably electronic equipment. But when something's in the 2 to 8 range, it's harder to explain. And the only place I get that consistently out here is about from the apartment over. And we found that out before we found this was the old home site. I haven't seen or had much happen out here, but I don't do much investigating out here. So it's probably something I should do a little bit more. When I've walked underneath our power lines, it doesn't interfere with my device. But I get very little readings except in this area, so maybe someone's checking out. There's two pretty good side poles to my right and to my left. And we don't allow any smoking inside. Obviously, if somebody does smoke, we've got a little ashtray they can use here.
That's small.
So this outline is where we were told there was a mass grave. And again, when we bought the place, we found out some of the history wasn't true. So we just kind of wrote off everything and thought, okay, let's start from scratch and see what we can find out. When the guys came out with the radar, both of them found there is something buried here. They said, I can't say if it's people or if it's animals, but there's something here. So as we built up rapport with some of the locals, we found out that several years back now, there was a couple that raised dogs, and they had something really unfortunate happen and lost a bunch of dogs in a very short time and buried them back here. So I think it's probably a mass dog grave. I don't know if that's creepier than a people grave or not, but you'll see some flags periodically that are orange and bent at 90 degrees. That's where dowsers have got hits. We have had a lot of people get really odd feelings out here, and I think particularly if you're somebody who really loves animals, that's probably going to affect you a little bit more. This outhouse was put in by Dr. Jones, Dr. Myron Jones. He was the last practicing doctor, the third doctor that lived at the property. He bought the house in 1935 and was here till 1947. In those notes that he wrote out about his time here, he said one of his first orders of business was to put in a proper privy. And it does work. If anybody wants to use it, they're welcome to. We don't get many takers on it. Over here's where the pioneer grave was, or is. So when we had the radar done out here, again, both teams got similar findings. About 70% of the stones, and that's where there used to be a tree and some rocks around it. Definitely a little walking hazard. But both the teams got the same findings. About 70% of the stones had hits centered on the stone and facing the eastern sun, which is how people were buried, so they would rise towards the eastern sun. We had cadaver dogs out here too. The cadaver dogs did not get any hits over at the mass grave. They got 5 hits over here. Where there's a yellow flag is where the cadaver dogs got a hit. And after the McCombs, we've got pretty good records of where people are. So either that family or pre them would have to be the ones that would be here. I found 7 coffin nails. Coffin nails could have been used, for other types of carpentry, but to have 2 radars hit it, a dog hit it, and then find the nails, makes me feel more confident that it is real. The gentleman with the cadaver dogs who works with a lot of universities said that just keep in mind the rate that they break down is going to have a lot to do with this and how they were buried, if they were just laid in the ground, if they were wrapped in linen, or if they were in a pine box. So somebody could have been buried here 100 years ago, but they've already decayed and broken down, so their body scent's going to pick up 5 or 7 yards down that way. So he said just because the dog got a hit here, and they also said if everything's decayed, it may just be a little subtle difference in the ground color at that point. There's a wooden cross over there, and the wooden cross is where Nick and Marcy Sacco buried one of their pet dogs. This house went through several generations of kind of its glory years, a lot of really neat things happening. And then in the 90s, it started kind of going downhill. It eventually got abandoned. There were squatters in here. And the house probably would have been torn down, not too much further down the road. But when Nick bought it in 2013, he fixed it up, did a wonderful job restoring things, and he opened this up as the historic Castle House Bread and Breakfast. Guests started getting scared out, so he changed it to the Haunted Castle House Bed and Breakfast. And I think Nick would have stayed here forever. He loved this place. Bought it in December of 2018. We stopped the bed and breakfast part, and there's again do our own stuff, and then periodic tours and whatnot. But out here, there's a couple of stones that psychics tend to get drawn to that feel like there's something particular about the energy associated with that. So that's kind of the highlights with it. I mean, you're free to take pictures, wander around, move the chairs around closer if you want to set out here. The property continues on. Behind that old chicken coop, that's kind of the halfway point. There's a fence that's open, and there's 2 lights that are energy charged, so they're solar powered, so they'll come on when it gets dark and stay on till about midnight. If you walk down that hill, there's a big open area, and that's where the Civil War connection is. Reverend McComb served in the Missouri Home Guard from June to December of 1861. The campsite was from the base of our property to the creek that stretches out about a half mile there. He and his buddies would have periodically come back up to the home. We don't know of any skirmishes that occurred here. I think the closest we found has been about 13 miles away. We have found some handmade buckles down there, little brass buckles. When we had the radar done, again, we got several hits. And the first guy's a retired geologist that goes all over America doing this. And he said, yeah, just eyeballing it, there's definitely campsites. He said it could have been Native Americans, it could have been the soldiers, could have been people who lived here, but there's been some groups that were camping down here. Experience-wise, we've had several groups feel like they interacted with soldiers or with Native Americans from the fence back. Myself, one night, I'd been down there about 3 in the morning taking pictures, not getting anything. So I'm walking back up the hill and I'm singing Dixie. I don't antagonize, but I thought I'm out here. If it's Union soldiers, maybe somebody will say, hey, knock it off. So I'm singing Dixie walking up and I hear something run behind me. There's lots of wildlife, so I figure it's just a deer got spooked. And have people ask us if we have horses, because they'll hear horses neighing down there. And we don't. We find lots of horseshoes here, but there haven't been horses here in a while, so that's fairly common. I'm glad to walk down there with anybody that wants to, but nobody has to. And it's not a real easy walk back up if your knees are a little sore. And when we finish the tour, if somebody wants to go down, I'll be glad to show you everything, but nobody has to. So we'll head back up this way. Oh yeah, we've had a group with a tripwire, one of the EMF tripwires that, they're I think 12 to 18 foot long. They have several little EMF detectors strung out, and they put it through the graveyard. And there's clearly no wires running under here. We have our wires coming from the street, go under the ground, and run into the house back here on the corner. There's no electricity back here, and their tripwire would go off like somebody was walking through there. It happened here, and it also happened behind the chicken coop. So so this milk shed up here was, at least here when Dr. Jones was here, he talked about milking the cows before he did any home visits or house calls. Hopefully we'll keep them out of here. We'll head back inside and when we show you pictures, please, if you can debunk something, feel perfectly free to do that. As long as you don't say anything about Judy, there's nothing you can say that never can. So this is the chicken coop, and this is at 1 a.m. It's pitch dark out there, but I've got a tripod and one of my DSL cameras sitting up on there. I click it, leave the shutter open for 20 seconds. As soon as it clicks, I take another picture. So there's something that's there and then it's not. And we have lots of varmints out at night, but when I get animals in it, they're long animals. You see like a 6-foot cat. So what does that look like to you all, with their knees like that? And, I can't swear it's not an animal, but if it is, it had to hold still for the 20 seconds it was there, and then that split second, before I clicked the next one, it had to get out. And, I've never reproduced it. I take lots and lots of pictures out there, but, and most of the time, even when it's really dark, when there's something out there, I see it or hear it moving around, and there wasn't anything that night. So this is upstairs, and any of the pink pictures are full spectrum pictures. We've tried to add things that are old or period appropriate. Judy got this mirror at Hobby Lobby. We love Hobby Lobby, but Hobby Lobby and haunted house just don't seem to go together. That being said, I get the craziest pictures in here. And mirrors and windows are terrible things to use as evidence because they're imperfect. They reflect at odd angles. There's all kinds of optical tricks that can happen. But I don't get the same thing twice almost ever. And I would think if it was just a distortion, that should repeat every time I'm in the same position. So this one, obviously this is me in the center. What I think is interesting, it looks like here and here there's black things, maybe kind of like black tentacles that go in front of my shirt. They're clearly in front of me, so they should be between me and the mirror. And that hallway's, no longer, maybe not even as long as this room, so you can see everything there. And the next one, Judy. Yeah, here's where I really know I've lost my mind. So we bought a box of dolls at auction because haunted houses should have dolls in them, and we just had a couple. So I bought a box, from an auction, $15 for $12. No history of them being haunted or anything. So this is at the end of the hallway. To that side is where the room is that I put the dolls in. But I didn't have room for these 2 dolls. So I carried them back out and I took a picture. And the 2 things I think are interesting is it looks like there's somebody here beside or behind me. And this is my hand, but that looks like a hand too. And I didn't feel anything odd. I mean, it wasn't a creepy feeling, and I wouldn't have known anything had I not taken the picture. And we're going to show you one more where it's lightened up a little bit. I think you can maybe see it a little better. But does this really look like anything to you guys? To me, that there's eyes here, the nose, the mouth, and the hair coming down, the body here. So that whole thing's a head. So about the size I would expect a child to be. So I don't know if that was possibly a child that was attached to one of the dolls, or was it a child that was here that was like, hey, I want these 2 as well. So, and I'm not exaggerating when I say I've taken at least 10,000 pictures of that mirror, and I've never gotten that, second time it was a one and done. And I've also never had another hand on my arm that I know of. Okay, so this one, couple things. It looks like the frame bends down, which that's kind of odd in itself, but it also looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4 little black fingers kind of curling around there. And that's coming from the master bedroom side, which is where the more intense things tend to happen. If something makes somebody feel uncomfortable or a little scary, that's the most common room. And then there's also this thing here. I have no idea what it is. There's nothing we have, in the hallway or setting, behind me that remotely looks like that. I mean, it almost looks like maybe a clay mask or I don't know, but whatever it is, it shouldn't be there. This was downstairs before we put stuff in the back room, and this may just be a streak on the mirror, but it almost looks like there's a man there with a hat on.
Yeah.
And then this is when I put the dolls in. The weekend I put the dolls in, it looks like there's somebody sitting on the dresser there, like their eyes are here.
Yeah.
And I got that figure maybe 3 or 4 times that one weekend, but never since. And that mirror reflects back towards the dresser that was there, and we didn't have anything on it at that time. I've got a couple figures up there now. We've never obviously had anything that looked like that. We had somebody say they thought it looked like a gray with a big head and the eyes, but I don't know what I think about aliens yet. What does this look like?
Looks like a tombstone, almost.
A tombstone.
Looks like somebody with a hat.
Hat on, yeah.
Yeah, like a.
Yeah.
That's what I see
Yeah.
mostly. It's like a fedora, like the black band here.
Yeah.
And there's a little
The-
V-neck there,
Yeah.
shoulders come, and then their body ends, like halfway.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm the only one up there taking pictures. I don't have a fedora. I don't have a shirt like that. And usually my whole body will reflect.
All right.
But it's a double pane window. There's a light outside. And, again, I hate using those, but that's where we get some of our most interesting pictures is in the windows and mirrors. Next one, Judy. This was just a random picture trying to get a nice one of the house, and kind of looks like maybe something right here. Looks like somebody with their hand on their hip and kind of a white apron on, a hat on maybe. We had somebody ask, do you ever hang dolls from the windows? And no, we don't. We don't hang dolls anywhere. Another one just trying to get a good picture in the day. And in this area, which is incredibly shaded, it looks to me like handlebars that are both outside and inside. And I mean, not scary handlebars, but why is something inside and out, and why is there that intense light that's in a shaded area? I don't know of any, and obviously I'm not using a flash on my camera and I'm way back from it. So was that an old plow? Was that an old mower? Was that an old, baby buggy? And then some people think they see a face right up here with the eyes there and the mouth down here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's not as clear to me, but I mean, I think it's legit, but I just don't understand. The whiteness is pretty intense and an interesting thing. So I take random pictures of Judy because she loves it. But the real reason is occasionally I catch something paranormal. I use the SLS camera, and I'm sure you're familiar with those. I walk around with it and mostly just look at the dark and bump into things. But occasionally something will happen, and I'm forever saying, could you sit in the chair, please? Stand on the bed, do this, do that. So this is in the white bedroom upstairs, and this is one night when I asked, and instantly 2 things popped up, one on the bed and one on the chair. And this is our thing with the Ouija board. With Ouija boards, again, people hate them or love them. They think they're portals to Hades. They think they're silly toys. I've never had anything bad happen with it. I remember playing with one just a little bit when I was young. Don't remember if anything ever happened. But once I got interested in the paranormal, I thought, what's the truth about it? Do they really work or not? I couldn't get anything to happen, so we started searching for a Ouija board expert, and we found this lady named Karen A. Dahlman, and she's a delightful person, really a positive, energetic person, and she's been doing it for 40 years, and she said she's never had a bad experience, and she said, I don't know how they work, if it's ideomotor, if it's just your vibrating in your subconscious, if it's a psychic connection between people, if it's spirit guides or some spiritual energy. She believes it's the spiritual part, but she'll be the first one to say, none of us know. So Karen was kind enough to come out here, and my wonderful, sweet, loving wife, Judy, was kind enough to be a participant. So I'm filming it, and Karen does a little meditation, says a little prayer, and then she said, my spirit guide's coming in, and when she did, this figure pops up on the wall. Now, that figure is Karen, and that's what normally happens. If you shine it at a person, they have their little stick figure. That's the way that you got brought into the video games. What I've never seen before is somebody's figure reach out and touch another one. So Karen's touched Judy up here, which if you're familiar with chakras, that's where the third eye is. and then down here, which is where the root is. So when I saw that, I thought, well, if these things work, is it possible it's just a psychic connection? You know, I think all of us have had the experience where you stare at somebody and they turn around because they can feel your stare, or you've done that. So is there some other means of communication that might have been more prominent in years back that we kind of forgot about and don't use, and that's the way this works? You're reconnecting. It's not spiritual or supernatural, it's just an energy transfer between two people. But I don't know, but I just thought it was fascinating that she called it and the figure popped up, and then she connected to Judy without Judy knowing it. Okay, this is one of the few times I was videoing and actually got this figure to interact. This is the room where we have the dolls now. There's a little soccer ball here, and there's a doll named Adina here. I'd gone by the room, there was nothing there, came back by it about 30 minutes later, and I saw a little figure, so this is what happened.
Yeah, I just came back into the Annie Dixon Annie Hill room, and as I came back this year, I just noticed there's something standing up on the bed by the post again. Can you tell me your name, please? Are you trying to kick the ball? Can you come over to one of the dolls? Are you trying to move the ball? Can you touch one of the dolls, please? There you go. It looks like you're touching one of the dolls right there. Looks like you extended your hand out and touched it. That's really neat. You got your left hand up now. Can you walk over to one of the dolls? Oh, wow. Thank you. You're right here, kind of between me and the doll. Do you know that doll's name is Adina? That's Adina.
Dark, and I think if I'd have seen it down there, I probably would have dropped it and screamed and said, yeah, this isn't fun anymore. Kids are right, that's where the monsters hide. So this was a static camera in that same room, and it sounds like there's an older person yelling something, and I don't want to tell you what I think it says. So we've seen that happen a few times since, and probably once or twice a year that door will start doing it, and that was a particular time when there was no air conditioners in the wall, there was no ceiling fans, no reason there would be any airflow. So a couple weeks later, we're up here, and if you watch right here, our motion detector went off. This is what set off the motion detector. And orbs are another thing that's pretty controversial. There's those that think every single orb's dust or bugs, and those that think everyone's a spirit. Personally, I think most are dust and bugs, and usually with dust, there's multiple particles, and they travel pretty erratic. Bugs are pretty easy to identify. This having a consistent size and kind of pulsating and having a direction and traveling that far gives it a lot more credibility to me. Because my understanding is that the dust needs to be about 4 feet away from the lens. If it's further away or closer, you don't get that reflection and see it. But to set that off, it would have had to have either mass or heat signature. And it went towards the closet door, which is one of the areas we have an awful lot of activity. We've had that same thing happen, and the ball usually starts on the door right behind it and travels that way several times, so it may be something repeating. Now, if you went into that closet and went over, you would come to this door, which opens up into the other room. That door shuts wonderfully. You can put your full weight on it and pull, it won't pop open. One morning, Judy and I are cleaning up, getting ready to leave. We're downstairs, and we motion in the white bedroom, and here's what happened. So watch this door. So that one, I don't know any way to debunk. I mean, there's nobody upstairs, and you'll see when we get up there, I mean, you can pull on it all you want, and it's not going to open unless you twist it. We have had 3 other groups catch that on their camera. 2 other groups see it with their own eyes. We had one young lady in particular, an adrenaline junkie, loved this stuff. She and her husband were getting ready to go to sleep a little after 3. That happened, and she was up the rest of the night, so it really freaked her out. But that's just, some of the things that we've seen. And again, we've got more we need to update at some point in time, but it gives you a little feel of it. So we'll kind of go through the rest of the house. We'll tell you some things that have happened. See some figure, shadow come around the corner there, or a little black cat walk into here and walk back out. The cat's been more active than normal. I think in the last week, 3 different sightings. Somebody outside saw him up in a window upstairs. The other group saw him come in here and go back out. We had a couple ladies, one of them heard it meowing. I saw it walking down a hall upstairs, and we positively don't have any pets in here. We sometimes will hear movement above us, like the bedroom, all the furniture is being pushed together or one big piece is being slid. And the first time that happened, again, we're so excited, we run upstairs, there's nothing out of place. So there's never been anything moved that we've noticed. There's a shadow box up on that wall. It's of Sister Edith. She's been there for 3 or 4 years and just hanging out, behaving. Where that mirror is on this other part of the wall, we had a picture of a guy named Sammy, who was a big band instructor or director. We got that from 2 ladies that are antique collectors who think a lot of their stuff's haunted. Sammy had been at their house and freaking them out. They said they were seeing him. He was banging on their door, so they put him up in a closet, and I said, I'd love to have him. I'll buy him from you. And they're like, well, give him to you if you'll take him. So we bring Sammy here. To our knowledge, Sammy has never done anything. So we mount that, and then we had one more mirror kind of like it that we were unpacking, and as we're unpacking the second one, Edith comes down off the wall. And you can see a little chip on that one side where it knocked off part of the wood when she fell. Now, she's never fallen, nor have any other pictures, so it could have just been a really unique coincidence. The timing could have just been such to make us think. But I wonder if Sammy said, well, hey, if I got to go, Edith's got to go too, or if there was something in one of the mirrors that didn't like that, or what. But the timing was just enough, it got our attention for sure. We had a picture here of the house. The only older picture we found of it that we think is probably from the 50s based on the car, and the apartment obviously is not added on up there. And then we have Reverend McCombs, the gentleman that bought the property in 1859, and then Clark Martin, who built it. Those swords up there are true Civil War swords. They're both Union swords. One's a musician sword, one's a non-commissioned officer sword. They're just from my personal collection. They're not tied in with the house, but since Reverend McCombs served, we thought it'd be maybe a trigger object or something to show a little respect. We thought it used to be the doctor's office. We'll walk back through this to a room that used to be a storage room.
You said it earlier, but I don't know if everyone
Oh, I'm sorry. Did everybody hear that? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You can see there used to be a seam here and there. So this doorway used to be really wide. And there were 2 doctors that practiced in this house. Dr. Walter Dixon, who was here from 1928 to 1930, and who also was the county coroner. So would have seen patients, possibly prepared bodies or done autopsies. And then Dr. Myron Jones, who was here 1935 to 1947. And he again would have seen patients as well. So we think because that apartment wasn't there, they would have brought patients in from that side. They could have waited here if they needed, been seen here, and then go back out, and it wouldn't interfere, with the normal family activities of the day. And it would have been, very easy access. Then when Nick and Marcy bought this in 2013, I'm suspecting there was some structural issues, which is why they probably closed it in and they turned it into a bathroom here. So we'll go back through here to Nicky's room.
There is a little figure to the left, so just a heads up, it's a little decoration.
So it doesn't scare us.
It's a decoration.
Okay, so don't scream.
This is not right.
This used to be.
Yeah, it's a tight fit back here. So this room originally was just a storage room, and where that outlet is, you can see there used to be a little window where they could reach into the kitchen. So if you beat on it, you can tell where the concrete ends and where that little pass-through was. And then when they got plumbing, they made this the bathroom. That's the old curtain rod, and the toilet used to be right over there. This is where I put things. This is a true human skull. It came from Guy's Dental School over in Bristol, England. Medical schools and dental schools sell their bones periodically whenever they upgrade them or think they need something new. By your feet, there is a ball and chain from a farm over in Rome, Georgia from the 1800s. Also a couple of billy clubs that probably have some interesting stories. The viewing coffin is an infant viewing coffin that we got from a farm in Iowa. They used to have their deceased, usually in the parlor, on display for 3 or 4 days until they buried them. One of the reasons they sometimes would extend a wake was really just to make sure they were dead, because once they realized people were getting buried alive, that was another protective measure. Up there's a funerary mask from one of the African tribes. I've got another one over here, and those were placed on somebody when they passed. Before they buried them, they would take it off and bring it into their home as kind of an ancestor remembrance type thing. The rattle's a shaman rattle, and I cannot remember which tribe that was from.
Lots of little figurines here. The brown ones from Guatemala. There's some of the Indian gods up there. There's the bigger bone carvings are from water buffalo carvings from Indonesia. Little ancestral figures. This is an African god. I don't remember his name. It's supposed to represent the god of the world. A black obsidian scrying mirror. A variety of different crystals. The Ouija board. This is just one we bought at a gift shop in Winchester Mansion. We have tarot cards, the Rider-Waite. This is the Golden Dawn. It's a little different one. We got dowsing rods. If y'all want to use them, you're welcome to. These have the sleeves on them, and these don't. Some like one type better than the other. And with tarot, if anybody wants a tarot reading for free, we're glad to do that. If you don't feel obligated at all. And if we read and it doesn't make any sense, that's fine too. There's a mask up there from Tibet that was used by shaman in exorcisms and other religious activities. This is a Nasiki figure from one of the tribes in the Congo. They were ancestral figures that have glass eyes so they can watch over the family. The nails were driven in to activate the energy, or if there's something tied to a nail, the head of the household made a deal with somebody, and that's the way they signed the contract. They would both drive the nail in. So this guy supposedly would watch over both of them to make sure they honored their part of the bargain. We have a couple of voodoo dolls over there. This was used in voodoo rituals. Another fiddle, another old Ouija board, a newer handmade Ouija board, and some old knives that were just handmade with bones and antlers. Somebody, I don't know if they just, we moved everybody from a cemetery when they were building or something, but that never got put back. So I thought, again, that's kind of sad. So and here we got pictures of Bert and Cecil Sullivan. These were owners who bought it in 1956. Cecil was Dr. Connor's niece, so she was really excited about this. Bert was a town barber. They were very involved in the community, did lots of entertaining out here. This is Bert and Cecil at their 50th anniversary, and that picture was taken right over here by the store. Bert passed away in this house in the turret room when we first came in. When he got older, his rheumatoid arthritis was horrible. He couldn't go up and down the stairs, so they moved his bed down there. So he passed away there in 1963. Now, I'll back up just for a second because I've mentioned the deaths outside. Dr. Walter Dixon's the first person to die in the house. He died in November of 1930 in the master bedroom from a heart attack. Then Charles Bass died in 1956, but not in the house. He still owned it, but he died in a hospital. When he died, his wife sold it to the Sullivans. Bert then died 7 years later from his rheumatoid arthritis. Cecil lived another 21 years, and she died in 1984, probably in the upstairs bedroom as well, the master bedroom, from dementia and issues related with that. Her kids didn't want the house, so they sold it to Sergeant Emerson Ali, a Korean War veteran. He died in the house from a heart attack in 1988, probably again in the master bedroom. So there was a series of unfortunate events that happened. And then after that, the house started falling kind of in a disarray. There were renters here for a little while, and eventually it was abandoned and squatters came here. And then again, that's when Nick salvaged the place. So, both these people passed away in here. And we've got, see this iced tea decanter there. That's been there since we bought the house, December of 18. I don't know when it was originally put there. In old homes, floors are irregular. Things move and vibrate and whatnot. Judy has this trait where she hates something being by the corner or an edge. It physically hurts her. She has to move it. And I'm just so scatterbrained sometimes. I set things there like she gets lots of practice. So she's really attentive to detail. So the day after this happens, I'm on the back porch. Judy comes in here to the refrigerator. There's a big thud. This thing has come off and hit her. Now, it's fairly solid. I put it back up there, it's 2019. It has not walked forward since. So it's possible it could have, and this is the one time in Judy's life she didn't notice something behind the edge. But that's what she thinks. I'm convinced whoever did this pushed it off, trying to say, hey, I'm still the matriarch here. Mm-hmm. And we've had a couple of the psychics that came in that said there is a matriarch figure here who's okay with me, but she doesn't like another matriarch. And apparently, I think though they've made peace, nothing like that's happened since then. I think she's saying that you're doing more good than harm, and like the way that you're fixing the house up. This was added on by Dr. Myron Jones back in 1935. Underneath this is a cistern, a 9,000-gallon cistern. And Dr. Jones oversized it because he's a very generous person. He let the community use it. And I'm sorry, we did have another figure hanging up there. We recently pumped the cistern dry. We were hoping to find something interesting down there, but it was just a lot of junk. And unfortunately, we found the skeleton of a Chihuahua down there. And I don't know if it was an owner's dog or a stray that had gotten in when it was abandoned, but we won't worry with that anymore because it's dry now. That Bible is from 1859, I believe, or 1858, and Reverend McComb came here in 1859, and that's obviously not his Bible, but he may have used one, like that or familiar with that. So I just think it's neat that it's within a year of when he moved out here. A lot of this stuff we don't normally have out, but I've got a Civil War saw from the Union, also one from the Confederate. The box and the tin are from gentlemen that were in the Army of the Potomac. We've got some of their bullets. There's also inside some bullets. The spurs were from a Confederate camp, as was the little kitchen of the regular knife. And they sharpened that. They think they tried to use that as a weapon. Inside that display, there's some beads that were from Indians in a camp in Georgia. There's some Victorian mourning brooches. There's 2 dice that were Roman bone dice, and then 2 dice that were Confederate bone dice. Then there are some little duck footprint things that are pendants, and those were used by sorceresses in the Viking society. Those were supposed to be very, very powerful amulets. There's also an Egyptian scarab that has some hieroglyphics on it, so that's about 6,000 years old or more. With the rings, there's a variety of them. There's a gypsy's ring, there's evil eye rings, there's plague rings, there's a Confederate soldier's rings, there's Vikings rings, and there's one ring that has a pentagram on it that's from the 1500s, and that was actually used by Christians. The pentagram, for the longest time, represented the 5 piercings in the body of Christ. More recently, people tend to think of it more with Wiccan and other things that are anything but Christian, but that was actually in an era where Christians wore that to represent the 5 piercings. There's some Native American things there too, as we had the Osage out here. So the arrowhead and the axe both were found in Missouri, not by me, but those were Missouri dug. The bells and the bracelet were from Georgia. The pipe, which is I think a granite pipe, really, really, really heavy, was from Mississippi, and then that's an Apache war club. Behind you there is a warrior bonnet, an Osage bonnet from the early 1800s. It is a real, authentic one. Feel free to look at it, but just please don't touch it. The bench was from a church in the 1800s. It's fairly fragile. All the things on that table are things I found metal detecting out back or in the front. Metal detect the whole property multiple times. And so back here, most of the time people think it feels nice. It feels more relaxed. Like Judy mentioned, sometimes people are seen going back and forth from here. We had a lady recently that felt like a little child was holding her hand. When she left, she felt she could still feel him holding her hand until she got back to her home in Kansas City. And says when she got home, it let go and she felt normal. We have had a couple folks feel a lot of problems breathing back here. I mean, it seems like that can happen in any room, a tightness, and when they leave the room, it's all gone. We also had a group here, and the lead investigator was sitting here in this chair with her back to the door. And I'm telling her some of the stories, and she said, "Is there any stories about cats?" I said, I don't know of any. And she kept pushing, and I said, "Well, Nick and Marcy did rescue with cats and dogs, but I just don't know of a story." And so the next day before they left, I said, "Why were you so insistent on that?" And she said, "Well, I could feel a cat circling my leg." And then since then, we've seen the cat come into the parlor, go back out. Again, somebody's seen him from outside. Upstairs, I was sitting down and it walked behind me in the hallway. So don't know if it was a rescue cat or where it came from, but that's a kind of curious thing. I was not expecting ghost animals or pets in the house.
Right.
A lot. The door, beautiful. I wish we knew who made it. It's got the same woodwork on both sides, but we don't. It was here when Nick got it, so he didn't know who made it. I'd love to give him tribute to, because I mean that's a labor of love. That's a very, very, very cool. But yeah, same on both sides, and don't know who did it. So we'll head back to kind of where we came in, the little foyer area. Now the closet, all these old staircases had closets underneath, so we cleaned it out. There's a little lantern in there you can turn on. If you turn it on, it'll either flicker or it'll be a white light. So whichever it does, if you don't like it, turn it off and back on. It alternates each time. We have a lot of times people sit here to do sensory deprivation. This is the first place I saw an apparition of a child. There was a young child sitting in the back, and he just stared at me, and I stared at him, then he disappeared. And I don't know if this might have been a place they used to play, if he was hiding or whatever. And Then that evening when I got in here, I was just had the door shut, no light on, and the word Yahtzee popped in my mind. And I hadn't thought about Yahtzee since I was a kid. So I set a Yahtzee cup and dice and scorecard back there. It hasn't moved. It probably never will. And I don't know if he played it or I just, for whatever reason, was thinking about Yahtzee that night. But hopefully that'll be a trigger object sometime. Now, behind you is where Bert passed away. That's where they had his bed. And I also used to have a table sit up there and did some of my dermatology work. I was sitting there one day, and I hear what I think is Judy wailing, just that heartbroken crying on the back porch. So I thought, crud, somebody's died. I've got to run back and see what's going on. I go back there's nobody there. Judy's in the apartment. She feels perfectly fine. We also had the dog.
I was bringing laundry down one day, and when I got almost to this landing, it sounded just like a dog ran down the stairs right behind me. And I turned around and nothing was there, but it definitely sounded just like a dog.
In case we have some of our more interesting findings, that's the screwdriver that I found. Those are the buckles that we found. This pocket watch and fob belonged to Charles Short. The spoon was Emerson Ali's. It was from the Korean War era. Obviously somebody found it, is using it for some other reasons. There's a little skinning stone. There's probably a vertebra made into a skinning stone here. Old Missouri tax token from the 30s. There's 5 of the 7 coffin nails. Old brass padlock that I found. It was from the 1800s, found that at the original home site. The smaller bottle was Dr. Dixon's. The larger one was Dr. Jones. On the bottom they're stamped and you can tell when they were made and where. This is a stethoscope cover that was Dr. Dixon's. When they bought them, they used to have a metal cover on it. It was crimped, and they would take that off and throw that away. It was stamped with a Pittsburgh stethoscope company, had the serial number, so we could figure out which year it was made. The horseshoes and axe heads we found out there. In the back, there's a little pop gun. That was a Daisy pop gun from the 1930s. Still got the serial number on it, so we figured out when it was. So that would have been Dr. Dixon's grandchildren. Dude and Jimmy would have played with that. The first toy car that I found here was the Ghostbusters car. The first coin that I found was an Alabama quarter. So I don't know if that was coincidence or what, but kind of interesting. Behind you, there's a picture of Dr. Jones, the gentleman with the microscope there. And then the crutches we have are true Civil War crutches. They're not a pair. They're behind you in the corner. There are 2 that I bought, over the years. The quarantine sign is a real scarlet fever quarantine sign. And we have noticed that we do seem to have a little more activity sometimes when we light candles. A lot of times people don't want you to do that. We're okay with it in certain rooms, like the candles on that table is fine to light. There's a couple more we'll show you. Just, please be careful. And, if something gets knocked over and burnt, just let us know. And, the chandelier here, as well as the one in the downstairs tour room, those are new. We put those up last year. So there was no light source at all. We thought, we needed to get something there. In here, we had lots of people hear footsteps. This room, we were told, and I think it made sense, that if somebody had to stay over, if a patient needed to stay, this was the room they stayed in. The master bedroom's back down that way. A lot of guests have reported since we've been here and prior that if they were sick or they pretended to be sick, they might feel somebody rubbing their back, patting their shoulder, leaning over them. So most of the things have been good sensations. We have had a few people in here break out in a sweat. We've had them, feel again like they can't breathe, they're suffocated, they have to get out. But the majority of things that are in here are good. The little child that I've seen, other groups have seen him in this room and in this closet and peeking around that corner looking down the hall.
That's the closet.
Yes, this is the closet y'all saw open. It clearly, it shuts really, really well.
Right.
And we'll go into it and we can cross to the bedroom, or if you want to walk down the hall, you can. Go through here, anybody that wants to. And there's a little lantern in here like the one downstairs. So it gives you just a little bit of light, and then that weird figure's down here to the left.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. But I've never been scared anymore. My curiosity always overrides my fear. This place I got scared the very first night that we're here as owners. It was December of 2018. We worked, we drove up here, got here about midnight, come in here, and I'm exhausted. I lay down on this side of the bed, I fall asleep very quickly. Judy is in a potentially haunted house in a town she's never heard of. There's this door that looks like it's from The Shining. She's looking right at it. So she's very, very much awake. This is what we heard. That to me is an intruder. That's not a ghost. So I grabbed my 357. I checked this. There's nobody in here. There's also a wooden door on the closet over there. It didn't sound like it came from it, but you can't make that noise beat on these concrete walls. I look in there, there's nothing. I check everything upstairs, there's nothing. I get downstairs and realize our door's still deadbolt locked, our security system's still on, and my poor, sweet, wonderful wife is alone in the room with the banging. So I come back up here and I'm shaking. I said, all right, y'all got me. Y'all won. That scared me. That really did. And so I get goosebumps all over a couple times, probably, just from the adrenaline rush. But eventually fatigue wins and I fall back asleep. Then around 4 a.m, I woke up again. My pillow got pushed in about 4 inches. So a couple of little things happened, nothing major after that. And when we drove back home, I said, Judy, I've got to go back by myself. The house beat me. I'm very competitive. It's one, I'm nothing. I'm not going to own something I'm scared of. So came back up here by myself, recreated everything, and you would have thought you were at your grandmother's house. It was so calm, so peaceful. I didn't hear a footstep, a creak. I didn't have a weird feeling. And, that's one of the things we've noticed is that, there's days or even weeks where there's zero that happens. And then there's other days where every day something happens. And the things that have happened in here, I'll sleep up here by myself a lot. Judy will come up if I want her to, but I know she enjoys the ghost-free apartment much better. So I'll sleep up here and I pull the shades, they're blackout blinds, so it's pitch black. So I was laying down on my stomach one night and I just got into bed and I'm trying to kind of position and I feel somebody sit on the bed. I can feel their backside against my thigh. Didn't hear any footsteps, just sitting down. So I reach over, I can't feel anything, and that lasted for about 10 or 12 seconds, then it was gone. And another night I was laying in bed and I felt like a really soft, cold pressure on my forehead, like somebody was just pushing, not aggressive, just like, hey, wake up or I'm here. And then the only time I've ever had sleep paralysis in my life was one night in here. And sleep paralysis, medically it's pretty well explained, but anything that is in the sleep, dream realm of medicine is all theoretical. And things I was taught when I was in school are different than what's taught now, and they'll be taught different in 30 years. And, it's always a process of learning and changing. And so I think most sleep paralysis probably is medical, but I also think that there's some that's probably not, or maybe a combination. Maybe when you're in that state, you're more susceptible to things. So the one time it happened to me, I was laying down, I had my hands folded behind my head like this, and I think I'm awake, but I'm sure I was asleep, but I couldn't pull my right arm up, and my right arm was towards this wall. I'm trying to pull it up, and then what looks like a really, really, really black tornado comes out of the wall, and it's spinning really slowly, and it's slowly coming towards me and slowly spinning, and the white part's toward me. And I remember I looked at it and I said, I'm not scared. I'm a child of Christ. You can't hurt me. So I'm not scared. And it just stopped and it started slowly going back into the wall. And as soon as I couldn't see it, I could pull my arm back up. And so it very well could have just been a natural thing, but it's odd that this is the only room, only once in my life that it's happened. And we've had others that stayed here that had really, really odd and disturbing dreams. Along in all the bedrooms, there's going to be a little red book that Nick put out for guests to write their experiences here. And so, there's some interesting things people have written, and a lot of things we didn't find these for a few months after we bought the house. And so we went back and read them, and a lot of things we've had happen, other people had reported too, and that's always kind of neat. There's a picture above that dresser of Cora Short. She was one of the owners here. She was here in the 1920s. And she was originally a miller. Her family is the millers that the county was named after. And then I failed to point out Fred Pemberton over here. Fred owned the house too for a short time. And he had a son named Jewel who lived here until he was 4. And then they moved to Oklahoma. And then Jewel unfortunately got run over by an oil truck and passed away when he was 6. And, with the dolls, like I mentioned, none of them have a history. None of them are supposed to be haunted. And that's the mirror that you could see that little figure, the pane closest to me, it was reflecting off of this dresser. And at that time, we didn't have anything on the dresser. The picture there that's kind of lighter that has the 5 people, that's Dr. Jones, his wife, and 3 of their children. The other picture is Charles Bass, his wife, and 2 of their 4 children. A Boo Buddy set up in here, and Boo Buddy's a little teddy bear that talks in a kid's voice, and he's programmed where he can just say a few things. And we have him on there saying, the cut is right in my tummy. Sometimes I think spirits can't communicate directly, but sometimes I think they use things around us. We do have a shadow that goes back and forth across here. If you leave the door open, sometimes you'll see that. cold spots have been out here to the bathroom. That little doll that's standing up, I'll put a cat ball in her hands because it's a pretty secure area. It shouldn't roll around and ask questions, and it will light up not infrequently. So that's kind of an interesting one. And that's the window, obviously, that the tapping was on. And that had never happened before, so it was interesting that they were communicating with that group that way. But we had a gentleman see the boy in his bathtub. He and his fiance were here. He wasn't interested. He was bored. We were standing in the hall talking while his fiance was in the doll room. He said he needed to use the bathroom, and he came around here, screamed, and ran back out. He said, "There's a little boy in your bathtub," and I went and looked, and there was nothing. Then another group guy came in to use the bathroom, and he comes out and said, "Y'all quit messing with the door." I'm like, "We're not touching the door." He said, "Well, it was rattling. Somebody was doing something." Comes back in here. That door you're leaning against starts rattling. And he's like, "Okay, I'm out of here. I don't have to go that bad after all." It's been a hot spot, and I never would have thought I'd say a bathroom's a good place to investigate.
Can you make it go off again?
Do you like playing in the closet?
Can you set the ball off? Or light up the REM pod? Please? Can you make it go thank you. Can you set off the ball on the floor?
Are you a little boy or a little girl? Can you play with the ball on the floor? Make that light up?
Okay, can you back away from the REM pod so that we can reset it, please? I thought maybe because I stood right here, you know how it's green light? There's a ball on the floor. Can you make that go off?
You guys just finished up the history portion of this video. We are grateful to have the opportunity to have you guys check out the content. We appreciate it. Not just that, we would love to have you a part of the community. If you haven't yet, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. It really does help us out. And if you haven't seen the live feed from this location, feel free to check out the live feed also, because you might see some content that you would have missed out on otherwise. So with that being said, we hope to catch you Saturday as we finish up our investigation at the haunted castle house located in Brumley, Missouri.